Good morning. We're going to get started this morning with an invocation from Pastor Banning Dawson of 8th Street Church of the Nazarene, and that will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Anna McLaughlin of Girl Scouts, Troop 7181. Please stand.
Grace and peace, friends. I'd like to invite us just to a few moments of silence. Silence is not something many of us are afforded these days, so may just a few be a gift to us today. God, who has been revealed to us as Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, it is an odd and a good thing that we would begin this gathering turning to you. Not odd because it's inappropriate, but odd because you are Lord, and you reign over the cosmos, and we would confess that we don't always like that. While it would be my hope and the hope of others gathered here today that the business and the discussions and the policies that are attended to today might be done within the framework of your kingdom and your desires, while that is my hope, we confess that our actions and our habits don't always speak to that. We confess that at times we speak without grace or understanding. We confess that at times we advocate for that which is not good for our neighbors. We confess that at times we don't practice discernment or seek wisdom. So may you forgive us, Lord, for what we've done and the work that we have left undone. Have mercy on us, and may that not be the case here today. Instead, might our hearts be tuned to the voice of your Spirit. Might we be present to you and to one another in these shared hours. Instead of arguing until someone wins, might we listen until someone feels heard. Lord, if you are indeed making all things new, if you are reclaiming the world, may we participate in that work with you today. May you give the council and leaders and citizens gathered the courage to step into the gap for the vulnerable of this city. May their decisions, their ideas, their policies, their passion be rooted in their care and love for their neighbors. May love be the beginning and end of all their actions. So, Spirit of God, grant us all the opportunity to humbly receive and to faithfully serve this city, that by our collective life together we might know a foretaste of that greater communion yet to come. Father, enlarge our hearts. Spirit, expand our vision. And Christ, establish your kingdom among us. Be at work even now, O Lord, and may your will in and through us be accomplished. And we pray this in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, thank you, Pastor Dawson, and thank you, Anna. All right, I call this meeting of the City Council to order. We are back into budget presentations. There are no votes today, and as such, I'll turn item 3 over to the city manager, who will kind of guide us through the 3 presentations this morning.
Thank you, Mayor. So this morning, to start off, we have Melinda McMillan Miller, with our Parks Director. She'll do a presentation on the Parks and Recreation Department budget. Rick Wickenkamp, our Director of Development Services, will then present the Development Services budget, and then Jeff Butler will present the planning budget for today. We'll have one more hearing. We'll discuss that at the end. As far as a hearing on the budget, we'll actually have 2 more hearings because the day that we adopt is actually formally a hearing as well. But I'll turn it over to Melinda, let her present the budget.
Thank you, City Manager Freeman. Our Parks budget begins on page 117 of your budget book. And I just want to take the opportunity to thank our marketing and promotions team, which is Robert Culverhouse, Lindsay Bain, Mark Nottingham, and Jacob Riggs, for their work on this presentation and the photography, videography, you name it. These guys are creating these PowerPoints for us, so I want to thank them specifically. So who is Parks and Recreation? We are 187 full-time employees and about 100 part-time and 100 seasonal employees, and we have over 170 parks. We manage over about 9,000 acres of land and 194 landscape medians and rights-of-ways. We have over 100 trails, multi-purpose trails, in our system, with 11 recreation centers, 2 family aquatic centers, 2 community pools, and 17 spray grounds. We have our 5 golf courses. We have 3 senior centers. We have a municipal fish hatchery. We have 2 event centers and 29 premier athletic fields over 3 sports complexes. But at the end of the day, all of this is to serve our 697,000 residents across our metropolitan area. A council priority is to produce enhanced recreational opportunities in community wellness. And we do this by providing quality recreational opportunities, promoting healthy living for overall community well-being, and providing convenient, attractive, and well-maintained parks and recreation facilities. Those goals are achieved with the talents and hard work of our department team members. In order to provide those quality recreational opportunities, the Recreation Division puts together a multitude of activities, camps, programs, and classes all across our community. From swimming lessons to our 405 soccer club and new adult performing arts programs, there is literally something for everyone to participate. These programs help each member of our city feel a part of the overall fabric of our community and to have a sense of belonging and are generally happier and healthier to live in OKC. One of our Leading for Results measures accounts for the number of participants in our various sports league programs. Our participation continues to climb with just under 6,500 participants this year. That number is expected to climb next year, and new opportunities are on the horizon on our adaptive sports for both youth and adults, including a new senior prom. The Recreation Division is a proposed FY24 budget of $5,876,338. In order to promote healthy living for community well-being, most people think that only physical activity can get results. However, the Natural Resources Division also contributes greatly to this goal. Our horticulture team focuses on creating well-manicured landscapes in our specialized park properties to help our residents feel less stress and depression. Our fish hatchery scientists grow and develop better fish populations that stock our lakes and ponds for better water quality and recreational fishing. Fishing is a sport that has proven results in lowering stress, blood pressure, and anxiety. At Martin Park Nature Center, our naturalists promote conservation, land stewardship, and an appreciation of nature for all, helping protect the environment for generations yet to be born. And for Will Rogers Gardens, the focus is on educating our residents about the importance of water-wise gardening, growing plants in central Oklahoma landscapes, community gardens for growing food, and health benefits of gardening. Another LFR measure accounts for the number of participants in Martin Park Nature Center's programs and classes. Now that we are past the COVID pandemic, we are seeing a steady increase in participation numbers choosing to learn about their urban environment. The Natural Resources proposed FY24 budget is $3,721,478. In order to provide well-maintained parks and park facilities, the Parks and Grounds Management Division performs an outstanding service to our residents. Their work encompasses 5 different working groups. The park maintenance team includes the regular safety inspections of over 100 playgrounds, and they care for the over 100 miles of multi-purpose trails. They also have just completed the renovation of our 29th premier athletic field. The special events team is always busy with calls from residents that are calling to use park properties and our amenities. And this past year, they managed 429 park amenity rentals, 111 special event permits, 46 revocable permits, and 272 event center rentals. Our grounds maintenance team is often the unsung heroes who consistently and tirelessly keep the parks mowed and looking great. Each year, they mow over 9,000 acres of publicly owned property and 194 medians and rights-of-ways. They mow into the grass, pick up the litter, edge the sidewalks and driveways, and perform their duties with care and dedication. And the Urban Forestry Division is a highly trained and specialized group of professionals that maintain over 19,802 inventoried city trees. They plant, they water, and they prune those trees in our parks and assist in the overall planning for future tree canopy expansion across the city to improve our air quality and lower ambient air temperature. And last but certainly not least, our hazard abatement team works to respond to calls from the Action Center to remove obstructed sightlines of our city streets and intersections. I love to show this LFR graph because it really exemplifies how variables impact our operations every year. The COVID pandemic greatly affected our ability to mow our parks every 3 weeks. That was from a budget reduction and also staffing and just work productivity dropped. Post-pandemic, we can already start seeing the effects of an increased budget for that capacity and some different management changes. And now that we are actually able to mow our parks every 2 weeks, as our LFR measure dictates, and we're meeting that goal this year and projected for next year as well. The Grounds Management Division proposed budget is $11,203,334. As part of the overall council priority to enhance recreational opportunities, we partner with several organizations and foundations to assist in the operations and maintenance of parks and public facilities. We cannot do all that we do without community organizations assisting in the beautification of our neighborhoods and our parks. Private businesses work with civic organizations to beautify our street medians and assist with organizing communities and residents to participate in park cleanup days and plantings. And the Parks Department also works closely with 6 groups to provide management and operations support of specialized parks and programs. And you can see from the chart that the participants at each of these facilities is very robust. I cannot stress enough the important role that volunteers play in helping us manage our department. Volunteerism continues to rise post-pandemic with record-setting numbers from our partners this year. Volunteers assist in various tasks from coaching our Little League programs, helping with our camps and summer programs, to painting park areas and litter pickup and planting. In 2022, we had 10,664 volunteers. That monetary value per person is $24.96 an hour. That means that over $3,844,000 of sweat equity was contributed towards overall departmental operations in the park system. But the sweat equity is not the only thing they contributed. They also contribute materials and supplies. That donation alone was $5.5 million. So the overall impact in the calendar year of '22 was $9,391,000, which is a massive operational budget savings for the general fund budget. The public-private partnership line of business for FY24 is $15,056,129. And behind the scenes, and certainly not least, is the department operations team who support our frontline members. The marketing team works to catalog all park activities and create communication strategies to inform our residents about services and opportunities that the department provides. The central business office keeps our finances in order and administers our IT support, facility management, HR management, and the all-important payroll. Our Park Planning and Development Division looks into the future to forecast community needs for new park amenities and enhancements, and are a team of landscape architects and a new GIS analyst. They also manage the park's development projects. And outside of the divisional support, there are 5 commissions and trusts that we administer: the Parks Commission, Golf Commission, Trails Advisory Committee, the Game and Fish Commission, and the Oklahoma City Riverfront Redevelopment Authority Trust. Say that 5 times fast. And of course, there are always those other duties as assigned that always fall to anybody at any time. The administration FY24 line item budget is $7,056,878 with the addition of 1 full-time employee. So for the major budget changes you'll see are the increase to the Myriad Gardens and Scissortail Park Foundation's management agreement budget, support for the First Americans Museum now that the foundation has completed their obligation. We'll also see support for the River Sport Foundation, which is a continuation from previous years. Also this year is the second half of the operational funding support for the Willie D. Johnson Center that we are excited to be able to open very soon. We also had a labor rate increase, the Metro Alliance's First Step program that we utilize for all of our labor and assistance in our maintenance team. And then that full-time GIS analyst that I mentioned, which is a total of $77,122. So to roll up our proposed operating budget, the operating budget in total is $42,913,857. So to move on to our capital budget then, for FY24, those capital budget, just to highlight a few, the Bricktown Canal, we have almost finished lighting the upper canal, and we are getting ready to turn our focus to lighting the lower Bricktown Canal. Those lighting projects together combined is about $3 million. Also, the Civic Center, the Grand Dam is needing to have the oil changed out of a ceiling shaper. And if we can't have great, incredible sound at one of our most award-winning facilities, we have to get this thing repaired. So that's about $400,000 that we'll be addressing in August. We have purchasing some more maintenance equipment for our forestry and trail maintenance team. We're adding more trails and adding more trees. Now it needs a little bit more equipment too. The Scissortail Park has a few capital items to finish up. And Will Rogers Gardens has some projects that we're trying to renovate some of the old historic structures and work on some new bridges that are desperately needed. And we're also excited to keep adding to our trail lighting across the city's facility, and we're adding some more solar lighting on the West River Trail and North and South River Trails. For some of our geo bond projects that are currently underway, the Civic Center Music Hall, the Little Theater, and the main lobby renovations are just about complete, and we're planning for that grand reopening on June 14th. Hopefully you've gotten your calendar invitations from the Civic Center Foundation. Wheeler Park, if you've noticed, is receiving a new concession restroom facility along with additional fencing and sidewalks across the park. That will be completed later this summer. The Greenway Trail is just about finished. I keep saying that, I feel like I'm a broken record, but it really is just about finished, and it should be open this summer as well. The Deep Fork Trail has concrete being poured everywhere, so if you haven't seen it while driving on I-44, you will definitely start seeing that bright gray ribbon snaking through the Deep Fork Trail. It should be set to open later in the spring of '24. At Woodson Park, if you've driven down I-44 and looked to the east, Woodson Park is all torn up. And there are 6 softball fields and 4 rectangular athletic fields that are being built, along with 2 concession and restroom facilities, additional parking and fencing, lighting. It's a very exciting expansion of the sports complex there. We are predicting it to be open the late of spring of '24. And last but not least, what we're most excited about is the new Willa Johnson Center. So that was your invitation, July 14th. VIP experience will be there on that Friday, so please put on your calendars, and invitations, of course, will follow. So then to summarize our full budget roll-up, then from our operating budget and our capital budget, the full Parks and Recreation proposed FY24 budget is $72,242,229 with 187 full-time positions. And I just want to also take this opportunity really quickly to introduce my leadership team. So Scott Fairman, our Assistant Director, Mike Smith, the Business Manager, Scott Copeland, Natural Resources Division Manager, Jacob Webb, our new Parks and Grounds Maintenance Superintendent, Naisha Morris and Mason Williams have been holding the line since Chris Hamilton's retirement and helping us continue to lead our Recreation Division. And these folks, with the other 310 outstanding professionals who make up your Parks and Recreation Department, are absolutely happy to serve our community and look forward to another great year. And thank you for your continued support. I'm happy to answer any questions.
At C-118 of your report, it talks about the total budget, which you just mentioned was $72 million, and that's an increase of almost 22% of that budget, which I want to thank the city manager for allowing that to occur. If you look at page C-120, under expenditures, you see where it talks about capital expenditures and operating expenditures. The capital expenditures have increased by 20%, and the operating expenditures, non-operating expenditures, have increased by 43%. Can you give us kind of a big picture of what's going on there and what we have to look forward to, please?
From the non-operating perspective?
For both, the capital
both?
expenditures and the non-operating.
Right, so in the non-operating budget is one of those that covers, it's multiple year budget. It's not a singular year, so that's why we call it non-operating, because it's very flexible. It's mostly composed of where we have oil and gas revenues from our leaseholds. If we sell park property, we use that same fund to then purchase additional parkland or improve the parkland right next to it. It also holds our different trust accounts, the Hathaway Trust and others, that we receive annual endowment funds from. That's where the Willa D. Johnson Fund will come to also. We'll put it in its own little account as well in our non-operating budget. And then also, like our 405 football soccer club, its operating funds come into that same non-operating budget. So the non-operating budget kind of has that different terms, different uses, and different needs. Whereas the capital budget is just that. It really is building up all those big capital projects. And some of our capital projects are also multi-year, of course. The general obligation bond doesn't just stick within 1 year. Projects take longer than 12 months to complete. So that the capital budget will maybe be 1, 2, or 3 years long, and funds for each one of those projects are sitting within that.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's why the capital seems so much larger, because it is that multi-year funds. It's lots of different funding coming into it, from impact fees, from bond projects to donations, and all that all comes together,
Okay.
along with ARPA programs too.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, thanks, Melinda.
Thank you.
So next up, we have Rick Wickenkamp with the Development Services budget. As Rick's coming up, I just want to mention again, I do appreciate the department directors bringing some of their leadership staff with them. That honestly, as we prepare the budget, in the policy, I've mentioned it before and can't say it enough, that we have a decentralized budget process so that it allows input from multiple areas of the city. So departments work on their own budgets and have input from multiple different employees within each one of those budgets, and it's the people that are actually out there doing the work. So I appreciate their recognition of their staff, but it's even more staff than what come to the meeting that contribute to the work on preparing the budget and especially in implementing the budget. So Rick, I'll turn it over to you and let you present the Development Services budget.
Okay. Good morning, Mayor and City Council. Rick Wickenkamp, Director of Development Services Department. It's my pleasure to get to introduce to you today our proposed fiscal year 23-24 budget. It's on page C33 in the proposed budget book. I want to recognize staff that helped put this budget together. Chad Davidson is the Superintendent of Code Enforcement, and John Gary is the Superintendent of Animal Welfare. And with me this morning of staff is Christilla Miles, who's my Assistant Director, and she's also the Acting Development Center Manager. My Management Specialist, Carol Reed, who really did the bulk of the work, putting the budget together. And then Tony Mitchell, my Executive Assistant, who put the presentation together, and we got a little bit of polish from Assistant City Manager Aubrey McDermott, so we appreciate that. And then also Daniel Dorgan on loan to us from the Office of Management, Budget, and Finance to help run the presentation. So I appreciate that, Daniel. So our mission statement for development services really is providing the services from our different lines of business. So ultimately to our residents and customers and the development community so they can receive timely development decisions and live in a clean, safe, and stable city. So our budget for fiscal year 24 actually is an increase of about 6.4% in our operating fund. That's a general fund. And in our non-operating funds, about 14%, with an overall departmental increase of about 7%. Our major budget changes, we're very pleased to be able to add some positions to our budget this year. So in the Development Center, we're adding a plans examiner to our plan review program. This person will primarily do commercial, new construction and remodels, but will also be able to assist with residential. We're adding Electrical Inspector 1 to our construction inspections program, which is an area that we really need support in. And I'll talk about a little bit more here in a few moments. And then a senior customer service rep. We had an agreement with the Oklahoma City County Health Department for a number of years where they did some licensing support for us, and that agreement ended at the start of this fiscal year. So this position will help pick up some of those services that were previously provided. In code enforcement, we're adding a Code Inspector 1 that will help with the overall environmental code enforcement in the city, but also additional resources as we get our new signed ordinance, and also as the city's homelessness program progresses, we may have ways to help with that. And then in animal welfare, we're getting $100,000 for our community spay and neuter program, which is really important, and I'll show the impacts on that here in a little bit. and also an animal welfare representative who will help with the overall customer support in our current shelter and is a step in helping increase our staffing for what we believe we'll need for our new shelter that we anticipate will come online in the mid-year of 2026. So we have 4 divisions in the Development Services Department. In addition to administration, we have the Development Center, which is our largest division with 86 employees, Animal Welfare with 60 employees, and Code Enforcement with 40. Overall, we have 195 employees. And our staff and our department really interacts directly with the public a lot, providing services. So again, our largest division is the Development Center, currently managed by our Assistant Director, Ms. Miles. And they do a lot of inspections, usually between 120 and 30 inspections a year. Of course, they do the plan reviews, both commercial and residential. They issue permits and licenses. And because of the nature of what we do, we get a lot of inquiries for information, public information, about 20% of the city's overall. And we also do a lot of cashiering. We actually bring in about $14 million in revenue each year, but we also cashier another $24 million for other departments. So one of our really important measures for the Development Center is the percent of construction-related inspections completed within 1 day. And we hit our absolute peak in fiscal year 19 at 94%. And we've been a bit on a downward trend. Some of that's been kind of COVID-related. And we're currently projected to end this fiscal year about where we ended last year. So looking a little bit closer at that, on the downward trend, our target is 90% of the time within 1 day of request. And if we look at the numbers from July 1st through March 31st of this year, building is right there at the target mark at 89%, and mechanical is really close to 88%. Plumbing is a little bit lower at 85%, and then we have electrical at 15%. And that really kind of tells our story of why the overall's at 70%. So there are a couple of factors with electrical that's really sort of given us a challenge. And one is attracting and being able to hire staff. All those different building groups have had challenges in that area, but electrical's been really the most impacted. We'll have vacancies and we won't even have any qualified candidates that we can hire. So we did recently fill 1 position. That's just been an ongoing thing for us. And again, one's filled recently. We have another current vacancy. The other thing that's really impacted us has just been the demand. So after medical marijuana passed, and we started doing inspections for those businesses that really increased the demand on electrical. And more recently, the solar permits have really skyrocketed on us. So this same period of time, July 1st through March 31st, a year ago, we had 286 solar permit applications. And this year, for that same frame, we'll have almost 1,200. So each one of those requires 2 inspections, a rough inspection and a final inspection. So that's impacted us pretty hard too. I do want to say this. So we know we're behind electrical, but we really try to still be responsive to our customers. So when somebody's got a house closing, something that they need has to be done, we'll do it. We'll prioritize it, and we'll take care of that. So getting this other inspector in our budget is really important, and we hope that will really help us pull electrical up in line with our other ones and be up around that 90%, which is really where we want to be.
I would just add to that too, and I appreciate Rick and the team staying on top of this. It's like we get regular reports on it. We'll add this position. We have in the past also added just overage positions during the year if we see that we can find another position that we could get filled, or find another person that we could fill a position. So we're just going to keep monitoring this. We want to work to get back to where we've been. And I know the other one is it provides a lot of stress on the current staff because they're working overtime and extra hours to try to make up what they can and cover this. So it's something we're staying in tune with, and I appreciate all the extra effort to try to address this with the challenges with staffing and the issues we've had there, but also just with different pressures that they've had is what Rick has described. So appreciate the extra effort.
And staff has worked very diligently. They've worked a lot of overtime, and we appreciate that. And we try to stay a little bit in tune about those demands we make on staff too. So, operational efficiencies for the Development Center. I really want to start on the right hand of this chart, and I want to talk about our electronic services that we provide. So we provide electronic plan review, which prevents people from having to print and handle and move a lot of big rolls of paper. And with electronic review, we can overlay different submittals so we can easily identify the changes. And then we also have interactive voice response and select text, which are both ways for contractors to request inspections and also get an update on their inspections without having to actually talk to a person. And they can also do that off hours, which is enhanced service there. Our Atlas Insight Mapping System is sort of a pictorial view where our chiefs and inspectors too can see where our inspectors are, what inspections they're assigned, so they can easily make adjustments throughout the day. And we also continue with live video inspections. So the thing about live video inspections isn't that we're going to completely move away from in-person inspections, because not all inspections really work well with the video, particularly building or plumbing where you have to have a depth of field. It doesn't work real well, but we want this a tool that everybody has. So they're out doing an inspection in person and something comes up some distance away that they can get on their tablet and do a remote inspection as well. So it doesn't completely replace in person, but it's an enhancement to our service. And then the other thing we're doing, which we're really excited about, is within the Development Center, we're cross-training staff. And it isn't just that we're cross-training within the program or the section that they work, but we've got people that have worked in multiple sections. So we're re-cross-training so that we can support, for example, plan review with somebody from our permits, or permits back to supporting plan review. So that's something we're excited about. We're trying to get more flexibility in our staffing and how we can support our customers. So code enforcement is directed by Superintendent Chad Davidson, and they also do a lot of inspections, and they issue a lot of notices. They remove a lot of illegal signs and inoperable vehicles, and a lot of junk and debris, and we're just coming into the tall grass season. If you've noticed, I noticed driving to work this morning, some yards that probably need to be measured, because with all that rain, when it warms up a little bit, the grass is really going to grow. So it'll be a challenging time of year, but they're doing a really good job. And of course, you all see the dilapidated and secured that come before council each meeting. So one of the important measures for us for code enforcement is the percent of first complaint-based inspections completed within 4 days. Because when someone makes a complaint, they want us to be responsive, and we also want to be responsive. So we're definitely on an upward trend here, and that's positive news. They've had some staffing challenges as well, but they're doing really well, currently at 90%. And then the other measure that's really important to us is the code violations resolved voluntarily. No one wants to see us, mostly, and we want people to enjoy their property. So if people will abate their code violation voluntarily, that helps all of us. And it also puts less stress on us and on the property owner. So we appreciate this upward trend. So the operational efficiencies, we've got technology here, but it's kind of interesting. There's always a sort of tension between technology and the personal contact. And in this case, we're enhancing our technology to help us with our personal contact. So instead of just having complaints that we have in our software, we've added our Meet Residents request, where we just go out and take time to communicate and talk to our property owner or the resident there who's got questions. And then we've also enhanced our software tracking, where we can make more notes, more information for follow-ups about that property. And so that carries over into our process and procedures. We're cross-training our staff there as well, more of our clerical staff. We're trying to enhance how our customer or resident communicate back with us. We found some gaps in that process this year. So we're including the inspector's name and contact information on their notice, also an office number. We're managing our phone calls differently. No call now rolls over to voicemail. If it's during our business hours, someone will answer the phone. And we've also expanded our certified mailings. We've historically mailed out what we're legally required to, being certified, but we've expanded that so we can track better the communications we're sending out. And then we've also streamlined our housing inspections with the dilapidated and secured with some more, with employees with more expertise in those areas, kind of handling those details. So impacts of our program, want to show you a few before and afters. This picture was a dilapidated structure, and now it's been cleaned up and it's secured. This was an unsecured property, unsecured, and it was declared abandoned, which is now someone living there. It's in great shape. This property too was unsecured property. Quite a difference, and those are some positive impacts. And then just a junk and debris cleanup. It happens in one day. I'm always kind of amazed. You know, I go out into my garage to clean it up, and I get overwhelmed, and I just go back inside. So our contractors do a great job of sorting through all that and cleaning it up really quickly. And then finally, animal welfare. It's managed by Superintendent John Gary. We have on our left, we have vet assistant Catherine J., who's filling pill packs for our recent health issues out there. And then the next picture next to that are our field staff. Very dedicated. It's good to see a picture of them together. So animal welfare, we get a lot of traffic out there, about 15,000 visitors a month. And our staff complete a lot of service calls in the field. And we run between 20 and 21,000 animals a year through there, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more here in just a minute. But we try to save as many animals as we can, and we have a lot of volunteers, a lot of volunteer support, a lot of community support. So and that really shows with our percent of dog and cat live releases as well. So, you know, I'm running out of room here on my chart. When the department started in 2009, I think we were around 30% live release rate. 2007 is a 25% live release rate. So we've really been on a pretty good incline there. Fiscal year 2021 was kind of a COVID year where we hit the 90%, which is our target. And we're down a little bit this year. The flu outbreak will probably drive this down a little bit more. And then we had some panleukopenia in our cats last summer that also has impacted this. But overall, staff does a great job. They've also had some staffing issues. They were very dedicated. We get a lot of community support, a lot of transfer partners. Central Oklahoma Humane Society is really big. The Bella Foundation is really big. The patrons of OKC Animal Welfare is really big. And Shawnee Mills continues to provide food for us. So it's really all hands on deck, but they do a good job, and we appreciate the support. And then one of the big things to us, and we're really pleased about this, is the number of public spay neuters performed. So as I mentioned in our budget, $100,000 is going to be added for this program, and we've got some added funding this year. So our target is 3,000, and we're projected to double that and up substantially over last year. That's a big thing to us. I mentioned that, you know, we are running between 20 and 21,000 animals a year, but the population of Oklahoma City keeps going up. And we were kind of hoping when we started this program, probably about 2010, that it would put us out of business. But it has made a substantial impact, because as our population goes up, the number of animals should really be going up as well, and it's not. So we've been able to hold that pretty consistently for a number of years, around that 20 to 21,000. So we're really pleased about that. Operation efficiencies, so that additional funding has enabled us to go from 4 days of surgeries for community spay and neuters a month to 12. And again, our sterilizations are way up. And then animal welfare just has a really big presence on social media. They try to be very transparent. They've got multiple Facebook pages. They've got an Instagram account. I think they've got 76,000 followers on Facebook. And last fall, they started a TikTok account. So they really try to get word out, and they also use that to communicate with foster parents and with volunteers. And then on the right here are veterinarians, and I think it's pretty important to recognize them. April 29th was World Veterinary Day, and so staff prepared them breakfast, and they revealed their new offices to them. Wasn't a new office, but they painted them and got them new desks, and we really appreciate what they do. Our chief veterinarian's in the center, Dr. Allison Haley. Dr. Shannon Ryder on the left is our other full-time vet, and then Dr. Kimberly Snyder on the right is a part-time veterinarian. These veterinarians are really competent and really committed, and we see that through the canine flu outbreak that we had. You know, we had a disease spreading rapidly through the shelter. We really didn't know what it was initially till we got testing back, and we lost 5 dogs initially. But over the 47 days we were closed, that's all we lost. We didn't lose any more dogs. So they worked really hard. All the staff out there worked really hard. And we reopened to the public over this weekend for Mother's Day, and we adopted out 153 dogs. So we were closed to the public for the first time that we're aware of. And then with the adoptions this weekend, we were under capacity on dogs for the first time that anybody can remember. So coming off of this kind of dark period of the canine flu, it's really nice to end on a positive note here. Knock on wood. So, okay. The community is very good to us, and so we try to be a resource to the community too. And of course, we do the free spay and neuters. We give out free collars and leashes. The doghouse program is really great. Sometimes staff will build the dog houses. Sometimes people donate them. So if we go out and somebody doesn't have a proper dog house, instead of citing them, we'll give them a dog house. And so that's a good program. We'll give out free ID tags, so we can help people get their pets back if they get lost. The pet food bank is really to help people keep an animal in their home if they get stressed financially. We give out about 12,000 pounds of free pet food a year. And then we do low-cost vaccine and microchips clinics with OK Humane and the Bella Foundation and the patrons of Oklahoma City Animal Welfare. And Animal Welfare also do educational outreaches with civic groups or neighborhood associations to try to improve people's relationship with their pets and just educate them about the services we provide and help them to, again, enjoy the pets that they have. So this budget, we're really pleased with this budget. The staffing increases, I think, really address some of our key issues that we have that need addressing. And so we're looking forward to the positive impacts that those added positions will do. So, and again, I appreciate our staff citywide, very dedicated, hardworking, once again, interconnect with the community on a daily basis. So, if you have any questions,
I know you're working really hard on improving electrical inspections, and I thank you for that. And you mentioned the challenges of finding inspectors and then the pressures with the solar energy inspections and then the medical marijuana inspections. As to the medical marijuana, is that increasing those inspections or is it on the decline?
No, it's on the decline.
Okay.
And in fact, the law changed. So initially, we had to inspect every marijuana business every year. And so now we only have to inspect the new ones that do it for initial inspection. So while that was tapering off, we were looking forward to that, and then the solar hit. And they're going door to door selling solar. I had a person at my door over the weekend. So.
Okay, thanks for your report.
You're welcome.
Thanks. Well, thanks for asking that question, Councilman. That's very helpful. Okay, so I'm really happy to hear about this additional $100,000 for the spay and neuter. Boyd and I have been talking, when I was knocking doors in the new part of Ward 2, and this was something I think we've already maybe reached out, or no, or we were going to, and then the flu hit, and so we were like, let's not. Point being, it's time to bring this up in public to kind of get your opinion and your help. When I was knocking doors right off of 23rd and Meridian behind Windsor Lane's bowling alley, there is this like horseshoe of a street over there called Harlow. You blink and you miss it. But there was an older gentleman there, lived there his whole life. His family used to have furniture stores in Windsor back in the 50s and stuff. But when I walked and met him, the cats, I am telling you, I don't know that I've seen as many cats there. And very friendly. And I talked to Jack, the resident, and I was like, what are all these cats doing here? And his theory of the case is that there's an apartment complex right off of 23rd, and people will get cats and then not be able to take care of them because of financial hardships. And so now these cats end up behind the apartment complex, and they're just all living there along Harlow. And I'm telling you, I would easily say 24 cats, easily. And again, the most friendly cats I have met, except for, of course, my cat, Marion, but that's personal bias and facts. What can we do about this? Like, specifically that area, but I already saw, Councilman Hinkle nodding his head, which means I'm guessing there are probably other places across the city. When I first brought this up to Boyd, he said, well, but we just don't have the capacity to be able to go out and do that sort of work. But we've got to think of something. I mean, this has been going on. I mean, Harlow, when you see it on a map, is just like, again, this super small street that had I not been out there knocking doors, I don't think, and I don't think Jack, who's such a good guy, would have even thought to reach out to us about it. So what's possible there? I'm happy to talk offline more about it, but I'm guessing, again, this is a bit more of a citywide thing, and I'm wondering, is it going to take private partnerships to help us?
Yeah, and I think that's a situation where we could send a representative out and do some communication in that area and talk about our free spay and neuter program. We have a trap, neuter, release, but that's usually for a community cat that's not necessarily domesticated. Mm-hmm. So this is a bit of a unique situation, but that, to me, would probably be one way we could approach it, and I'm sure our superintendent might have other ideas as well. But one thing would be to communicate, make contact in that area, and see what we can do.
That's wonderful, because we were really successful in Paseo. When I moved there 10 years ago, there had been just this one cat. He sure did love all the other cats. And it was just like generation after generation. And, unfortunately, as you very well know from this work, so many of those litters of kittens would pass away because they just didn't have the kind of support that they needed. But eventually we were able to, through the capture and release program, we've only got 2 left and they're spay and neutered. So we were actually able to interrupt that cycle. And that's what I'd like to be able to accomplish over on Harlow as well. The other thing, clicked as planning walked in the door and as as Parks was here before them. I think my other question for you all 3 departments, are the following. One, what can we do? I know when we had, it was some zoning case that came to council a couple months ago. It was about the Oak. There was some extra stuff about the Oak development. One, do we have any updates yet on those site maps, I believe we call them, in terms of their, I think we talked about briefly putting additional language on there in terms of language, like different languages that could go on there. So that's my first question.
I'll check with Jeff and see if we've got anything more on that. I don't have an update on it right now.
Okay. And then secondly, I'd like to see, and I know we just hired this chief innovation officer, so I don't have the answer here, but I'm thinking between the 3 various departments, well, I guess it's more development services and planning here. I'd like to figure out, for instance, like a zoning education video. I know that when Public Information made one for streets and that funding in the system of government, I shared that and on social media, and people loved it. Like they were like, I had no idea what a pavement condition index was until that moment. I mean, they were very thankful, and I suspect something similar would happen if we were able to create some sort of video. But I'm also open to other things that would inform people about the zoning process, because what I've learned in the first term is that most people have no idea about zoning until a zoning case comes within that 300 feet of them. And I don't think that's right. I think that we need to make sure more of our people understand this as a proactive thing rather than on the reacting. So I don't know that answer of what, like I said, a video is one thing, but I don't know if it's water bill education, through there. I'm open to all kinds of things, but that would be kind of, are we already thinking like that? Or is this the first time I'm?
Well, subdivision and zoning, this current year went back to planning from us, so we're a little bit less involved in the zoning piece of it. So I think the video is a great idea, but I don't want to speak for anyone else. And they may have other ideas too that.
Open.
If I may, I think to the point of what you're saying, for code enforcement, I think a video would be very
Yes.
appropriate for people to understand. If your grass is this high, this is why we're coming to see you. If your grass, just showing people the differerences. And I'm sorry to take your time, but I want to thank you all for going back to the drawing board and looking at how we make these notices and our connections to those residents, because there has been a disconnect and some miscommunication. And I appreciate you all taking responsibility for that and saying, what can we do better to serve our residents, especially when a lot of times that's the first interaction they have, is something on their window or something on their door, and they panic. Like, what is this for? What just happened? So I would hope, as we look at these new things that we're bringing on for this budget season for you all, as far as that connection to the resident, that we're creating a space to explain what this looks like for those residents as well, because you all are the interaction to our communities and to our neighborhoods first, especially with those code enforcement inspectors that come, whether we see them or not, because a lot of them are like Batman and Robin. They just drop it and they're gone. Because I've seen it myself. I was like, where did they come from? I still don't know. I didn't see them. So if we are able, and even if there's a way of communication for people to just know, not to know exactly their name, but maybe just a picture or vision of who they are, what they do, what their day looks like, because that's also a concern for, I know, the folks that I represent, that I always get concerns about code enforcement and what they're doing and how they're coming into communities. So if for me, that would be the helpful piece that I would ask for.
I'm so glad you said that, because I agree. And to Councilman Stonecipher's earlier comments on the electrical part, when I talk to developers, particularly in the urban core, that electrical work, that is like the number one thing they bring up to me. So I think anything we can do, like the way you all have that in that graph right there, I think it would probably be helpful to educate folk on that process, maybe even be able to educate them on the whys in terms of why we're behind. Because on the streets video that we made, we didn't just make some glossy thing that said like, look, this is the streets process and isn't it great? It actually explained in there the kind of whys in terms of why we're behind. And again, people really appreciated that. But I think additionally, in terms of like kind of walking people through that process of, what to expect when you're going through the construction process and that sort of thing, I think additionally we need to be anticipating with like the Henrietta B. Foster Center coming online, the existing Kiva program that's starting to connect people to their kind of entrepreneurial dreams. I think we need to anticipate that over the next decade or two, we're going to have more residents becoming these sort of small business owners. And this is our opportunity to go ahead and kind of lay out that process of here's what to expect when you're engaging with the city to become someone who's owning a brick and mortar store, or even one of these trucks or whatever it might be. So that'd be kind of my big thing to say there. I'll save the rest for planning. Thank you, though.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Appreciate that. Next presentation is the Planning Department, and Jeff Butler is our Planning Director, and appreciate his leadership in planning, and we'll let him present the 23-24 budget for the Planning Department.
Good morning, Mayor, Mayor and council members, and Mr. Freeman. Thanks for the opportunity to share our budget for the upcoming fiscal year. I just want to give a few thanks as I start. Aubrey Atherton, our management specialist, for putting this together, putting our budget together, helping administer it throughout the year. With me today, also Lisa Chronister, our assistant planning director, and Chris Varga, division manager for housing and community development. So with that, I'll walk you through our proposed budget, starting with our mission. To guide growth and development of our vibrant city in a sustainable way to ensure that our current and future residents and businesses can thrive. This philosophy is at the heart of the planning profession, and we feel like good planning includes knowing what the goals and priorities of the community are, strategizing ways to achieve them efficiently, and implementing actions with accountability. So here's our budget for this year, summarized. General fund budget, $6.4 million. The grants management fund at $54 million. Special purposes at $3.3 and adds up to a grand total of approximately $64 million. So as you can see, the general fund is a relatively small portion of our budget, about 10%. The bulk of the department's budget comes from that $54 million in federal grants. And that supports the programs centered in the Housing and Community Development Division. And this amount fluctuates from year to year as we try to maximize the amount of grant dollars and support programs by being as efficient as possible with administrative costs. The number is a little higher than usual. We've been spending about $3.5 million per year on COVID additional funds that we've been receiving for the past 3 years or so. So just one more thing to point out here, the Grants Management Fund is the total available, so it's not something that we spend in a given year. These are multi-year funds that will spend out anywhere from 1 to 7 years over time. But this is kind of a snapshot of what is currently available that we'll be spending out over time. So, and speaking of grants, we'll just wanted to give you kind of an overview of, so within the grants line item, this pie chart shows you the major categories there. As you can see, the Community Development Block Grant is 29%. That makes up the bulk of our grant funds, and those funds are, there's a lot of flexibility there we can use. Then we have the home funds, 22%, Continuum of Care, which supports our homelessness programs. Brownfields, COVID-related awards, Youth Homelessness Demonstration Project, we're excited about. That's a new, we have an infusion of funds available for that. Housing opportunities for person with AIDS. And finally, we have some other grants that are available as well. So department structure, last year we added the subdivision and zoning division that transferred over from development services. And so right now as proposed, the planning department budget will have 61 employees working in 5 divisions. In addition to those 5 divisions, we have the Office of Arts and Cultural Affairs, led by Randy Marks, and the Office of Sustainability, led by T.O. Bowman. We have the Current Planning and Urban Design Division, led by Katie Friddle, and that improves development codes and manages the special design districts in the city, like Bricktown, Historic Preservation, Downtown, Urban Design, Asian District, Plaza, in Uptown. The Subdivision and Zoning Division, led by Sarah Welch, processes development applications for the Planning Commission Board of Adjustment, and it provides consultation to developers, applicants, and residents. The Plan Development and Implementation Division, led by Kim Cooperhart, develops plans and studies like Plan OKC, Bike Walk OKC, Affordable Housing Study, the Downtown Development Framework, and others. This division also houses the Neighborhood and Commercial District Revitalization Program and the city's Transportation Planning Program. And finally, we've mentioned the Housing and Community Development Division, led by Chris Varga, who's here today. And this is our largest division, as I said, manages federally funded grant programs. So to highlight our budget changes and some of our ongoing programs, the Special Program Coordinator overseeing homelessness, this is a change that actually has been made, want to formalize in the budget, moving this position to the City Manager's Office, which has been taking point on homelessness issues. We have several homelessness staff that remain in the Planning Department, and we'd like to add an associate planner to the homeless program, and this will be housed on that second bullet there. That'll be housed in the Planning Department. So we're working closely with the City Manager's Office to improve the situation for those that are unsheltered or homeless. Just want to make sure I cover the bases there. So the position, the new position will work with Lindsay Cates, who is the Special Program Coordinator, to work on the Homeless Street Outreach Program, some of our encampment rehousing programs, and so on. A lot of things to work on. A lot of good work to be done there. I mentioned, so transitioning to this, the Key to Home is what we're calling the Encampment Rehousing Initiative. And this budget, the largest request in this budget is for that $2 million that you see there in front of you. And that's for the Key to Home Encampment Rehousing Initiative, and that was discussed at the recent recent council workshop on April 4th. And at that workshop, a plan was presented for this initiative, which aims to reduce chronic unsheltered homelessness by 75% in 2 years. So this represents a portion of the funding needed for that initiative. Other federal sources, such as HOME, ARP, ERA, will be leveraged as well as private sources. And the second bullet there, we proposed increased funding for the Commercial District Revitalization Program of $30,000. This program has been around for more than a decade, and it's important to the growth of the city because it encourages investment in these older commercial districts that are important to keep thriving. And the number of districts in this program, the successful program, has doubled over the years, but our budget's been flat, so we'd like to increase this to allow us to serve the additional districts that have been and will be brought in, and just to keep up with costs and inflation. Just a quick shout out, the East End Merchants Association on Northeast 23rd Street was recently created, and we'll also be bringing in the Farmers Market District, Southwest 3rd and Klein, to be created soon. The budget also includes funding for homeless street outreach services, and that's a partnership or an agreement with the Mental Health Association for administering that, and that is currently being assembled and put together, that program. The activities to be provided include coordinating with the city's public safety departments to provide a non-police response to low-risk calls for assistance to 911 or the police non-emergency number, and providing proactive outreach to people experiencing homelessness. Our budget also includes funding for the A Better Way program, which we've had for a couple years now. And that program offers individuals who are experiencing homelessness or panhandling a job for a day. They help beautify, maintain, remove litter from medians, street rights-of-way, and other public areas. And in the return, they receive a day's wages and resources and support to help them find housing, mental health services, and addiction treatment, and sustainable employment. Another change we'd like to do, in FY23, an overage was approved for an assistant planner to be shared between the Office of Arts and Cultural Affairs and the current Planning and Urban Design Division. That provides additional capacity for urban design, historic preservation, and of course, arts and culture. And we'd like to make that position permanent. So those are the changes and highlights that we wanted to make for our budget. I'd like to go through and talk about how our budget helps us to accomplish our goals and how we're doing as far as measuring progress. So we try to align our budget with, of course, council priorities and the community's vision and goals as expressed in the plans I mentioned earlier. And so we use our strategic business plan to set the path and help us accomplish those goals. The first issue, community development. Our business plan calls out specific things that contribute to declining community vitality that can impact our city's ability to provide services and attract economic development. So these issues include crime, poverty, homelessness, public health, education, insufficient quality affordable housing. The community development and social services programs help us combat these issues and can impede further decline and deterioration of our neighborhoods and business districts. So we're trying to strategically use these resources in targeted revitalization areas, working to improve community appearance, working hand in hand with our partners to assist the needs, provide for the needs of our most vulnerable residents. So here's one of our measures that we look at, and this is an important one. We've talked a lot about supportive housing recently in the context of homelessness. So this particular measure, the percent of people who were formerly homeless, who remain in permanent housing for more than 6 months. So we follow these individuals that have been housed. We want to make sure that takes that is permanent, that they're not just back out on the street. And we do pretty well here. We do quite a bit better than the national average, which is around 75%. So we're happy with that. We want to keep that at a high level, and we'd like to see that increase. You see, as you know, most measures do, a little bit of fluctuation there, and that's normal. But we'd like to keep that at a high level and get as close to 100% as possible. So this means moving clients into permanent housing and providing for these supportive services. And that's, of course, as you all know, our approach, which we've had for about a decade or so, of housing first. So rather than having kind of barriers that people need to meet in order to get into housing, we get them housed, and then we provide services and try and help them stabilize their lives and remain in housing. So we're happy to see that this measure is doing well, and we hope to see it get even better. Another measure that we track, community safety in the city. So the percent of residents who report they feel safe, the top bar chart there. We've had a little bit of decline. Again, we see kind of a normal fluctuation as expected. However, that's something that we have our eye on because it has declined a little bit over the past, in recent years. You know, there could be any number of reasons for that, but we hope that over the long term, through our community revitalization efforts, that we can see that go up. And then the next one, the percent of residents satisfied with the appearance of the city. Again, we've seen a little bit of a slide back there, so we have our eye on that. We're working. The appearance of the city could be any number of things that people have in mind. Probably includes the concern that our public has expressed lately with homeless camps and litter, which is something that we have been putting a lot of effort into in recent months and over the past year or two. So the hope is that those efforts will bear fruit and those numbers will be able to go back up in the near future. So the next issue I wanted to cover, urban revitalization. Obviously, these are all interrelated. a growing city. A city is in constant need of maintaining its vitality, improving these older neighborhoods, making sure that they don't stay down, that the cycle continues and we have improvements. So we try to avoid urban decay, urban decline. It is inevitable to some degree, but you want to have that cycle go back up in a given neighborhood and have reinvestment, so people can remain in a vibrant city, live close to their jobs, live close to good quality city services, parks, amenities, and so forth. So with that, here are some LFR measures that we track. This particular one is the changes, the percent of participating commercial district revitalization program districts that will maintain or increase total property value. So what this is telling you is 13 out of our 14 districts right now are maintaining or increasing their overall property value. So that's an indicator of success for us. It tells us that, as you can see over time, that number has been increasing. So our goal is 100%, and we're getting close to being there. So that tells us that the efforts that those business owners, property owners are making along with the city are bearing fruit. Another LFR measure that we track related to this is the percent of residents satisfied with their neighborhood's attributes. And this is again from the community, the citizen survey that we do. Our goal for all these measures is 65%. You can see represented by that red line there. And we're exceeding our goal in some areas and not so much in others. So we have work to do for amenities and sense of community and property maintenance. So that's something that we track over time, and we've actually increased our target. Used to be a little lower, so we do see some improvement over time. Finally, the third issue we have is sustainable growth. So as we implement our comprehensive plan, which covers all of this ground that we've discussed today, and implement those strategies, we hope to see improvement. So it's our responsibility to guide the city's growth in a way that promotes quality of life, efficient service provision, and our human, economic, and environmental health. Our comprehensive plan helps guide many different types of decisions, understanding that each individual action contributes to the cumulative effect of a growing and changing environment, which can affect things like the cost of and quality of public services, infrastructure and maintenance costs, stability and strength of neighborhoods, environmental and public health, and the functionality of the multimodal transportation system and our capacity to support it. So I'll cover a couple different measures here. This one is the percent of development and redevelopment that happens in the inner loop annually. So inner loop is defined by the interstates, I-44 in the north and west, and going down to I-240 and over to I-235 and 35. So it's the older areas of the city, generally speaking. And if we can see some continued investment in that area, then I think we're doing well. And you can see again, the usual fluctuation these days with COVID and some of the numbers you've seen. It's it's sometimes a little tricky to tease out a trend. But generally speaking, we're doing well. Our target has been around 20% range. And our trend has been just a little bit below that. So we want to continue to see this, of course, if not go up, stay the same. As our city grows, that's important to us. We have an ever-increasing urban area, and so it will naturally be more difficult to maintain this number. But the fact that we have so much development happening in the core is definitely a good thing for our city. I think this is the last measure. Yes, it is, that we'll cover. This is the increase, the percent of commute trips made by walking, bicycling, or public transportation. So it fluctuates around 2%, which is a low number. If we look at comparisons, for example, Tulsa's at 2.1, Nashville, the same. Indianapolis is 4%, so that's double what we have. Albuquerque is also roughly double, 4.6, and Kansas City at 4.6, San Antonio 4.7. And for reference, Chicago, a major older city, is like 34%. Nationwide, it's 7.7. So we're definitely on the low end, and we have work to do. The good news is, of course, you're all aware that we have BRT lines going in, funded by MAPS 4 in the planning process. We have the Regional Transit Authority doing good work. And so there's a lot to be excited about. We have a new BRT line going in on Classen. We have a lot of new bike lanes coming to kind of after a long planning and development process. You're seeing a lot of green paint these days being put down. So this kind of measure is something that takes a while to see notable improvements in, but we expect as these things come online and people get more comfortable biking, walking, riding BRT, that we'll see us get closer to some of these other peer cities that I mentioned. So that we're excited to see what can happen there, and we'll be tracking this number to see what happens in years to come. Just that's something that is important to help keep our citizens healthy. Just give them availability of transportation and ability to get to work, to keep their costs down, of housing and transportation costs down. So just in closing, we're pleased that this budget allows us to continue to advance our goals and mission with additional focus on housing our most vulnerable residents and improving neighborhoods and districts. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So, oh, is that me? Okay, maybe. I'm glad thanks for your report. I'm glad that on your report you all mentioned the community appearance, because that was what I was wanting to bring up earlier when Development Services were speaking. Have we looked into, I know in MAPS 4 we have the beautification dollars and there's an operating component of that, like small, I think it's like 5 million. But have we looked into what it would eventually cost the city to increase our budget when it comes to the ongoing landscaping and maintenance of at least, I would settle for arterials. I wanted in neighborhoods, but I'd settle for arterials. Being able to do, for instance, the sidewalks, right? Someone mentioned to me the other day, while they were happy to see the sidewalk that we put in on Northwest Expressway connecting the BRT station at Penn to connecting a pedestrian to Belle Isle Library, they mentioned like they were disappointed that we didn't put any trees or landscaping along the sidewalk. And I said, well, good news, we're heading that direction. That's something Embark and I are very much working on. We did a whole study on where utilities are. And so that calmed them down there. But then that got me thinking that there are so many places where we have installed Better Streets, Safer Cities sidewalks. We're about to do more of the same when it comes to MAPS 4. But I think a missing component with those sidewalks has been landscaping alongside them that guides the pedestrian through an aesthetically pleasing, psychologically enhancing experience. Have we started to look into what sort of cost it would be to do? I'm talking shrubbery. By the way, I'm also talking native plants and trees, things that would reduce the city's need to do the watering and the maintenance. But I just think we really need to look at landscaping and maintenance as part of that beautification. And have we yet, and can we?
Yes, so for that sort of thing, landscaping, the addition of trees, there are of course a lot of ways that the city tries to accomplish that through street enhancements of varying funding sources, and of course, you mentioned MAPS 4. And tree cover is important for so many reasons, not just for beautification, but to provide shade and comfort for pedestrians, to encourage pedestrian activity. Also, wanted to just plug, we're doing I mentioned T.O. Bowman in the Office of Sustainability earlier. They'll be working on a study with OU this summer to measure the temperatures as it gets really hot here, and it gets extra hot because of lack of tree cover and the increased pavement that we have. So that's something that we're interested to see the results, because we feel like we know that the urban heat island is a thing. To the extent that we can plant additional trees and additional landscaping to offset all the additional pavement that just comes with being a city, that's going to be a good thing. It's always a challenge to come up with a way to maintain those, because as we see just in downtown with Project 180, trees die for various reasons. They don't, and so there's replacement costs, there's watering costs, it is costly. I know that that's a concern that we always have, and so we try, when we do a street enhancement project, to partner with business improvement districts or organizations that can maintain that, because it is so it's costly and it just requires a lot of manpower. So, but having said that, it is something that we want to focus on. The planning department has more in mind, I think, now, and making sure that that's part of street enhancement efforts that we do and costing those appropriately. It's difficult because street enhancement, you want to get as much sidewalk as possible, and so it comes down to, well, do we put in more sidewalk, or do we plant trees and landscaping instead? That means we can get less sidewalk. So it's tough to make those calls. There's no easy answer there. I think it just comes down to the corridor that you're working on at the moment, the need for sidewalk versus landscaping. So it's something that we all need to keep in mind. The planning department, everybody who's making those decisions, whether it be MAPS 4 funding or bond funding, how do we prioritize appropriately the landscaping and the trees for human health, shade, and the appearance that people want to have.
Yeah, and I agree with what Jeff is saying. I think when we look at it, probably what we're more likely to see is on gateway areas, like what we're doing with the beautification projects and corridors, as opposed to like everywhere. I think really when we look at it right now, the priority is to get more sidewalks available, and that's really where we put more of our capital funding. In addition to that would be that long ongoing capital maintenance, or the maintenance that's required on landscaping. So I think we'd have to be careful exactly how we do that. So I think trying to balance that to hit those key areas that are more visible, that we would try to focus in those first. But I think it's balancing that with how much we're investing in capital to get more sidewalks, and then what that maintenance cost is and our ability to be able to manage that. So I think it's something that we have to look at as we move along in the programs.
Is this something then heading into the next bond? I hear all that, I do. As I hear it though, I'm looking in my mind at May Avenue from Northwest Expressway to Wilshire, right? We just put in really nice new sidewalks from 63rd to Wilshire on both sides of the road. But the problem with those sidewalks is, and I'm talking like use your imagination, be very specific in your mind right now. Look at over there where I think it's Natural Grocers, and then we're Vintage Stock, that sort of area. Those sidewalks are they're right up against a 4-lane May Avenue, right up against it. And so when you look at a 2.1 or whatever % of people who are using pedestrian means to move around, they're not doing it, and it's kind of a national problem too, but I can't focus on the rest of the country. They're not using them as much because, to your point, Jeff, when we don't have the trees and the landscaping, alongside those sidewalks, but very importantly, and this is some constructive criticism about the ones on May, when they're not in between the road and the sidewalk, a pedestrian does not feel safe. And so I hear the gateway, and I'm glad I know we got to start somewhere. I guess what I'm asking is it that as we head into the next bond, can we start thinking about funding that would make it less of a, we got to make this choice between walkability and the appearance, because they're all connected. We can't disconnect them, I guess, is what I'm suggesting.
Yeah, I mean, you're right about that, but I'll say that when we start looking at it and start narrowing projects, if we have, I'm just going to throw a number out, but if we have $1 billion that we could go in the bond, it'll be more than that, but if we had $1 billion that could go in there, we're going to have $2 billion in projects or $1.5 billion in projects. When we start narrowing it down, two things that we'll look at is, one, how do we maximize our capital dollars? And then two, minimize ongoing operating costs or manage ongoing operating costs. Both of those will come together to make it difficult to do this broadly, just realistically. So I think, definitely it's something that can be included and incorporated in the conversation. It'll be challenging to do a significant amount of it.
So then, I can't let this go quite yet, because again, when I think of May Avenue, I'm also thinking of a neighborhood like Lakehurst, who has gone out of their way. They do landscaping along May Avenue out of their own funds. I was just talking to one of their residents about this the other day. Is it then that, the sidewalks and bike lanes we've installed so far with Better Streets, and in anticipation of the MAPS 4 can we review the work we've already done, and then ask ourselves, you mentioned, I think we have a landscape architect, for instance, can they go look at those places to see what enhancements could be? And even if, I hear what you're saying, City Manager, even if it's not entirely that we're able to put a whole bunch of money in the next bond, can we at least articulate these needs and then do these private-public partnerships where we can reach out to the different nonprofits to be able to say, hey, here's where the city, we've gotten us this far, but we're really going to need your help, private sector, nonprofit sector, because I don't know that we've really engaged them at that level to articulate our needs along these investments. Do you follow what I'm saying?
It really becomes kind of a partnership where a lot of times it maybe works the other direction, where we'll have a neighborhood or a group reach out to us and say, hey, we would like to do have more landscaping here. We're willing to maintain that. And when we can work into those partnerships, that helps us to do that. I just still think we are so spread out, have so much land, that it's probably going to be more, for us, it's going to be better, rather than trying to look at everywhere we could do this, try to focus in, like what we've got with the beautification projects with MAPS, on those corridor areas, on those gateway areas first. I just think it's going to be more realistic to do that. But I think there are opportunities for partnerships, and we'll continue to look at that as we see the opportunities being there.
Okay, well, I'll continue my advocacy on this, because I'll also note, as I was hearing these presentations, it's not just drainage, it's not just cleaner air. The landscaping and trees lead to significant reductions in crime. And so when you see these results that you're showing us, where residents are saying to us that they have concerns about safety and they have concerns about appearance, they are tied together. And that's why I can't drop this, because when I hear people talk about, we got to do something about crime and let's have more police officers, it turns out it really is about investing in the appearance. Those things go that extra mile. So that's why I can't drop it. So I'll just put that there, and I'll look forward to working with planning to see what we can do, at least in Ward 2, and targeting some specific areas to address that.
Welcome that.
Good. Isn't that great? Okay. That's it for now. Thank you.
Jeff, I have a couple of questions. Thanks for your presentation. About 6 or 7 slides back, one of the metrics was we have 50% of the people here who feel safe. So was the question on the survey 50-50? I mean, do we have 50% of our people here that don't feel safe? Do we have 43% of the people here who think the appearance of the city is bad, or was it a step down of don't really care, don't have an opinion, yeah, it's okay, hate it?
Yeah, there are some, it's a graded thing, but yeah, essentially half the city doesn't feel super safe. So, and there are different, I don't recall, unfortunately, the exact wording, but they either just flat out don't feel safe, or they're just kind of neutral, or, yeah, just varying degrees.
And I don't recall
that-
in this one the things we also do is we'll compare this to other large cities so that you get kind of a benchmark that you know what you're looking at. I mean, there's sometimes you'll see one of these and it looks like it's extremely low, but when you look at it, it's like 10 points above other cities our size. I think that's another comparison that we look at. And I know we do dig in and go like feeling of safety in your neighborhood, feeling of safety in your neighborhood at night, feeling of safety in a park. And so it goes into more detailed questions, but we can make sure you have a copy of that.
I've seen the presentation recently about how the city feels about, or the residents feel about the city, and it was very favorable. This metric right here just kind of surprised me that half of the city, that's why I asked whether it's a step.
I have the answer. It's online. Our most recent citizen survey, 2022, perception of the city, feeling of safety in the city, 7% are very satisfied, 43% are satisfied, 20% are dissatisfied, 6% are very dissatisfied, and 24% are neutral. So it's basically, I see that the 50 comes from adding 43 and 7 together, satisfied and very satisfied. And then generally a pollster would probably add dissatisfied and very satisfied together to get 26, and then consider the rest to basically not have an opinion. So I'd say it's 50-26.
I have a few things. As we look at first the commercial district revitalization program, I'm curious why we only ask for 30,000, especially for our businesses, in considering that, in my opinion, as we look at the needs for we have 14 districts now, that's not a lot of money. So I'm curious why we only ask for 30% for that. So that's question one.
Sure. You know, we of course would love to have more. We did ask for more, but you know, it's something that, as the city goes through the budget process, it's a matter of prioritization. So there are just a lot of needs out there.
Okay, so we're not prioritizing our commercial district revitalization program or our districts. Got it. Our Better Way, what was the budget? What were we last year for us to ask for 120K this year?
I'm sorry, can you say that first part again?
The Better Way program. I see an increase of 120,000. Is that
that's
correct?
That's just
the
a
same
highlight.
budget?
Yeah, exactly. So it's not an increase. It's just highlighting that we're still funding that program.
Okay, I know at least from the last year's budget conversation, there were numerous asks that this number would increase as far as this program is concerned. And clearly, we're still not prioritizing this program for our residents that are experiencing homelessness, as well as understanding the benefits of what A Better Way can do for the folks that have been a part of this program. So I see we're still in the same position as last year for those. So my third question, as we look at the planning department and looking at all of the different department pieces for the folks that we have, what are we looking forward to as far as some type of internship program to bring in more planners? And I ask that due to the lack of diversity that we have in our planning department because of the certain issues and concerns as we look at planning in perspective for our city and respectively certain areas of our communities within our city that need these type of representation or conversations that can speak to their concerns or needs respectively, as far as how we build, how we plan, and how we revitalize parts of our city.
We do actually we had a couple of new interns start just the other day. where we actively work with, typically our interns come from OU. We also have interns come from OCU, occasionally OSU, it's a little bit further away. But we have staff, senior staff that participates with OU, and we have 3, I believe, interns right now with the 2 new interns. And it's just a matter of, we love those interns, they do good work, and in fact, we often will hire our entry-level positions from those internships. So it's a good opportunity for us, and it does, looking back, provide some diversity in our department. We really enjoy those opportunities, and they typically work, we like them to work as much as they can. They typically work 20 to 28 hours a week, depending on their availability and their school schedule.
Okay. As we look at sustainable growth in the urban revitalization, I know, I can't remember which category we have our S&I program in. I'm curious as to why we aren't adding to this particular area of our planning department instead of adding interns, because of what we see as far as the needs and wants for our neighborhoods that are being represented by our city for strong neighborhood initiatives.
Sure. So the S&I program, it has been in our 5-year forecast that we would like to add additional funds to both that and, of course, the CDRP program. And as we discussed, we are able to add some to the CDRP. S&I, in order to add another neighborhood, it would be about $500,000 of general fund, and we would need to support that with an additional staff member. So it had the additional FTE cost to that. So it's a substantial amount of funds that would have to come from the general fund. We can't really use any more federal funds. So we're kind of maxed out in terms of the amount of federal funds we can use for S&I. Right now, it's fully supported by federal funds, and we've been fortunate to have some COVID funds that have enabled us to do things like, for example, the plaza, fully fund the plaza in Capitol Hill. So because we don't have that ability to get additional federal funds for that program, it really has to come out of the general fund, but it's a substantial number to do another neighborhood. And so it is kind of it's not something we can increase gradually. That next step would have to be a big jump. And it's just, again, it's a lot of resources, and it's just a prioritization process.
Okay, so it sounds like we're not prioritizing in that area. And this is one department, in my opinion, that lacks the diversity that's needed in connecting with our neighborhoods, especially because technically we're in a lot of our black and brown neighborhoods for our Strong Neighborhood Initiative. And with cultural competency, that is a need for our planning department, as well as specific programs that we use within our planning department to ensure that we have the proper representation conversations and, most importantly, outcomes for those neighborhoods. Because I know for sure, in speaking to at least a couple of those neighborhoods, that the outcomes, while yes, you can visually see some things, some of those neighbors are not going to tell you how they really feel due to who they may be talking to and having those conversations with. So I really want us to be very cognizant of where we put our priorities as far as these types of programs, and in this department, again, with that lack of diversity that is needed. Another thing that I wanted to ask about is consultants for issues, and I named that specifically because of the conversation we had to have last week as far as our zoning application. and I know this is going to continue to come up. Is that a part of our general fund, especially for staff reports, when we have to have and look at pieces of our comprehensive plan that may have some difficulties in as far as interpretation, where we may need some consultation to give us proper approval or opinion or lack of, or disapproval of whatever we're looking at as far as that application and that staff report is concerned? Where would that part of the budget come from?
For multilingual services, is that what you're asking about?
I'm talking about consultants. As
Oh.
far as, I'll just say specifically, as we talked last week, we had a concern with vulnerable aquifers.
Oh, gotcha, okay.
So as far as our staff reports are concerned, when we have these types of issues as far as our comprehensive plan, where are consultants, where is that part of the budget? Is that part of, do we have that in our budget for us to be able to use and call upon if needed?
Yes, there is a limited amount of professional services that the planning department could call upon, or city manager contingency if needed. So the city council could request for a PUD if there is additional information that is needed, study that's needed, they can request that. The funds, those types of things could be funded. They're often funded by the developer as a requirement. And again, that's part of the PUD process. That is custom zoning, it's negotiated zoning. So in that particular case, for years and years, the Planning Commission would request developer-funded traffic studies. The Planning Commission or City Council could do that as well for other studies that might be needed in their judgment. So depending on the need, and if it's for a specific case, then that could be done. If it's something that, an improvement that needs to be made in a city plan, then we would come up with, depending on the level of service needed, we could come up with a funding source for that. So for example, the Affordable Housing Implementation Plan that'll be coming to you for contract approval coming up soon. That's funded through city manager contingency funds. And the reason for that is because these plans, oftentimes we don't know precisely how much those are going to be. And so putting them into our annual budget can be a little difficult for the larger plans and studies. So we often will rely on that contingency funds. But for smaller studies, there are other ways to accomplish that.
Okay. A couple more. As we look at our Office of Sustainability, a couple things that came out, especially from our previous presentations. I would like for us to look at how we communicate with our development services for maybe that solar programming, and also with medical marijuana. I know at OU, they do, in their planning department, they do have a course that talks about medical marijuana and dispensaries. So I'm assuming that could be a part of planning and a part of development services as well. And as we look at the Office of Sustainability, another thing that has also piqued my interest due to some concerns from some of my business owners are our special permits included in our PUD process that we maintain in order to allow for people to have those extra uses within that PUD. So I would like for us to figure out a more defined way of how we categorize, how we also hold that business or that PUD accountable in that use unit, and also how we can continue to track. I know for some, DEQ may do some things, but I also feel it's our responsibility as a city entity to be responsible for that same maintenance that we have not been able to do in a lot of aspects until someone calls and complains, instead of us being a little more proactive in understanding how we can be a part of ensuring that we're not reactive, but we are proactive with those same residents or business owners, depending on what they are doing. And I say that sensitively because of an issue that, in my opinion, would rely more in that sustainability as we look at composting, conservation, solar, all of these things that are starting to find their way in our Adapt OKC plan. There are ways that I would like for us to look at how we implement that plan, how we hold ourselves accountable to that plan, and how we bring in more thought to that plan, again, in partnership with DEQ, and also, again, finding our own ways of ensuring that we're working through that process. And I'm glad you brought up affordable housing, and this is my last observation, because I have a really difficult, I won't say understanding, but just processing the thought, and that's why I speak to the lack of diversity piece of us saying yes to a couple of the folks that we said yes to affordable housing, especially within the neighborhoods and communities I serve. And one, I will just call out the Demera development that's going to be happening on Kelly within the 30th area, because that is predatory housing and home ownership, predatory home ownership, where you have to reside in this area for 15 years before you even get a conversation about if you can own that property. So I'm very concerned and very disappointed that we weren't able to really take into account how we look at affordable housing and the places that we choose to say yes to, and the companies and their ideals and processes that we choose to say yes to, instead of us looking at what has been tried and true. Whereas Urban League and another developer that has already provided housing within our community, we said no to. So I have grave concerns with the way we are using affordable housing predatorily for our residents in certain areas and aspects, instead of us being able to have these really unique, intentional conversations. And I know that came from our planning departments, which again, to me, speaks to that lack of diversity of us being able to have these conversations. So I'm hoping we'll be able to look at how we prioritize the things that I've said that clearly we have not been able to prioritize for this budget.
Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate the great work that you all do in leading the organization and planning and all the development and everything. There's just so many challenges that you all face in the way that you lead with limited resources, acknowledging limited resources, and then maximize the resources we do have with the grants. I appreciate your leadership.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so that concludes our presentations on the budget for the day, which brings us to item 4, citizens to be heard, and we have 2 who have signed up to speak. Ronnie Kirk will be followed by Joy Reardon.
Ronnie Kirk. My address is 2328 North Missouri. For the last 2 weeks, I've been on the radio talk show, 92.1, for concerns of the new jail. Norman, he's also been on there for the last 2 weeks. And there are several others who's been on there for the last 2 weeks for the concerns of the new jail on the northeast side of town. You know, the location probably already been picked. We're not concerned about the location. What the northeast community is concerned about, where everybody's in police in custody, not police custody, where everybody's in custody. Now, why not train them? 30 days before they get out of jail. Teams used to train them. Some of the temp service. You know, I learned to pick up cigarette butts and nails years ago. I'm sorry, years ago. They can go down where the tornadoes have been all over the state and help clean up these areas. The temp service, when you get ready to let them out in 30 days, they'll come pick them up. I know several temp service will come out and get these kids. Everybody as younger than me is a kid. So give them something. They should have, while they're in custody, get the ID for them. Give them a bus pass. So when they let out of jail, I don't know what time they let them. They used to let us out. I've been in jail before, 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. You know, you don't want them walking down the street, land on the bus stop, and they just got out of jail. No, give them the ID, a bus pass, give them some type of skill.
30
30
seconds,
days before they get out of jail. Thank you. Those are the concerns of most of the people calling in on the radio talk show. Thank you.
Thank you, Joy Reardon.
Good afternoon, or morning, City Council. Thank y'all for being here. And to the mothers, thank y'all for giving us life. I do appreciate that. My thing is, y'all were talking about the sidewalks and stuff like that. Thank you. We need actually to look at the sidewalk that's already in. A lot of them will have like a 2-inch, 1.5 to 2 inches of where they're been moved and stuff by like true roots and stuff like that. At one time, when I was pretty young, they went back and in some of these neighborhoods and redid a lot of the sidewalks. I wish we would have a program to where instead of relying on these businesses to do the sidewalks, it's a city project, Mr. Freeman, specifically, since you're the city manager. If we could look into that, I would appreciate it. Because every time I call the Action Center about a sidewalk, oh, it's left up to the business. And you know the businesses ain't going to repair the sidewalk. You already know that. The other thing I had was, because I had a doctor's appointment, I couldn't be here last week, and I didn't know that OSHA was having their lying session. Instead of an on-cue, how about a Brahms? It would be a better thing for Oak Grove. Because on-cue is not going to put in fresh fruits and vegetables. And you know Brahms will. Why not look at something like that? And Oak Grove's had multiple, through the years, had multiple improvements to their thing. Fencing, at one time they had metal things around the sidewalks. They just got done with a major upgrade to where they put in geothermal within the last 10 years. And you're right, Ms. Nice, about the I can't remember exactly what you said about last week, but it's going to end up,
30 seconds, please.
it's going to end up just like up there at 24th and MLK. Exactly, just like 24th and MLK. And their phase 2, what are they going to do with all the residents that are actually living there? Most of the people that live there are Hispanic, African Americans, and stuff like that. Let's look harder at what they're proposing.
Joy, we're over time.
Thank you.
Thank
One-
you.
One last thing.
Okay, sure.
It's the scooters. They're getting worse. Please, I'm begging you, and I don't beg y'all for much. Let's do something about the scooters, because I'm having to move at least 50 of them a day away from hydrants, away from the push buttons and stuff like that. If y'all could do something, city ordinance, whatever, please. Because someone's going to, in the ADA community, is going to get seriously injured or killed with them. Thank you. Y'all have a good day.
Thank you. You too. We're
And
at item
thank y'all
5.
for everything that y'all do.
Thank you. That was our final citizen to be heard. We're at item 5, adjournment, and we are adjourned.